Alright, real quick before we start, I just want to quickly define what each tier means. S tier means these items are goated, offensive items in this tier are run winning, defensive items in this tier are run saving. A tier are items that are slightly inferior to items in S tier. B tier are items that are a little more inferior to items in S tier. Items in C tier are pretty mid, and items in D tier are complete trash. So starting off with Bolstering Lantern, I'm going to put this in A tier. It's pretty much just a better syringe in almost all scenarios with the exception of maybe Mithrix. The fact that it gives you the buff when not just enemies are in your radius but also allies means you can just pretty much have this buff at almost 100% uptime if you buy a couple drones. It's kind of insane. In most scenarios, it's just a better syringe. Chronic Expansion, I'm also going to put in A tier. It's basically just a free better watch that doesn't break in pretty much every scenario except for the Mithrix fight. A tier. Elusive Antlers. Oh man, what a 180. Yeah, I'm gonna go put this item in S tier. Ridiculous item. When you maximize its potential, it's equivalent to 4 goat hooves. What? Yeah, no, that is absurd. You can pretty much get the minimum amount of speed you need in a run with just this one item. Such a good item. Warp Deco, I'm gonna put in A tier. Is basically just another oddly shaped opal, which is already like one of the best defensive items in the game. In some scenarios it is better though because it does apply when you use Shrine of Bloods or Void Cradles and whatnot. Pretty good item, one of the better defensive items in the game. Pretty much on par with an opal. Breaching Fin I'm also going to put in A tier. Now this item is actually bugged. It does more damage than it should. It uses the multiplier it's supposed to use twice. So instead of doing 20% extra damage, you're actually doing closer to like 44% extra damage when you knock them up in the air the first time. It's kind of absurd. And then when you knock them up a second time, pause, it does 1.4 times 1.4 damage instead of just 1.4. Yeah, this item is kind of crazy. It's even gotten to the point where Artificer's M1 can proc bans if you knock up an enemy 3 times. Yeah, crazy item. It's probably gonna get patched soon. But for now, this definitely belongs in A tier. Chance Doll, also gonna put in A tier. 40% chance to draw from a pool that upgrades your item. Pretty good overall, I'd say. Getting a really big chance to get greens means more green scrap if the greens suck, which means more reds. There's a lot of good reds in this game now, especially after the DLC dropped, which indirectly makes this item a lot better. Also just a lot of good greens in this game now. Yeah, Chance Doll, very worth to pick up. Like, I know some people don't view the upgrading of items as valuable as I would, but I think with all the greens and reds in this game, I'd say it's in a pretty good spot now. Luminous Shot, unfortunately not that good. I'm going to be putting it in B tier. It is a lot better than it was back then, because now it's 175% total damage. It being based on total damage is such a good change. But unfortunately, just what it does in general is just not that good. Especially when you would compare it to all the other items in A and S tier right now. Noxious Thorn, I'm gonna put in A tier. Holy moly. Any build with debuffs is insane with this item. Acrid is insane with this item. This item just synergizes with so many items in this game. It's really good. Plus an initial 10% bleed chance. Dude, sign me up. This item is A tier. Prayer Beads, unfortunately, I'm gonna put in C tier. Not quite D tier because although it usually gives the stats of like a steak or 2 or 3, the fact you can scrap it and still get some use out of it is pretty good. Makes it a lot better than a couple bison steak. Sail Star, obviously S tier. Getting 2 or more of any item from the first chest you open is such a good item. Encourages some fun item macro management for sure. It makes rusted keys a lot more viable. You can bring a key to the moon and still pull a red out of your ass. You can open the legendary chest to get 2 or more legendaries. What a fun item, genuinely. Unstable Transmitter, you're gonna put in S tier. This item is absurd. It gives a one-shot protection on top of being consumed before your power elixirs and your watches. Dude, what? And then the cooldown for it? Only 45 seconds. It's basically just an infinite power elixir that protects power elixirs. Yeah, this item is absurd. And then the 45-second cooldown, if you have a blast shower, it's just gone. And the fact that it has one-shot protection means if you have a blast shower and a couple of fuel cells, you're practically immortal. Easy S tier. Wow. Electric boomerang, it's another proc item. What do you want from me? Extra 30% damage, very good on proc heavy characters, pretty decent overall. I'd say A tier is a correct placement. Growth nectar. Gonna be putting this in A tier as well. Hey, this is me from the future, and after a bit of deliberation, I actually want to change this placement to S tier. The fact that it increases stats per buff is pretty insane, especially after this overhaul. It makes buffs just overall easier to get. There's more buffs in the game. There's more things that count as buffs in the game. Pretty much anything in the bottom left on top of your health bar counts as a buff now. Because before it was like some weird thing where like bands didn't count, but shurikens did. But now they both do. Pretty much almost anything on the bottom left does now. But what makes this S tier in my eyes is the fact that those stat increases are multiplicative instead of additive. Because by the time you reach like stages 3, 4, or 5, you're gonna already have so much damage increases, attack speed increases, speed increases. So the fact that all of that gets multiplied, yeah, dude, this item is absurd. Because at first, I didn't think it was multiplicative. I just thought it was additive, kind of like irradiant pearls. I just thought it was like 3 irradiant pearls into one item, but turns out it has potential to be a lot better than that, which is pretty absurd. I'd say the only downside of this is the crit chance. That being multiplied instead of being added to is a bit of a downside, but in exchange for everything else being multiplied, yeah, I'd say this item is pretty broken. But yeah, just ignore the fact that this item will be in A tier for the rest of the video. I'm a bit too lazy to re-record. Okay, bye-bye. Runic lens. This item is broken. I've seen so many people downplay this item. Nah, bruh. This item is broken. It does so much damage. I know the description gives people the impression that it's better on like high burst damage survivors. No, even on high proc characters that don't really do that much burst damage like Commando, it is insane on him. The proc chains you can create with this thing, it's absurd. Did you know that this item can proc itself? Not directly, but through other proc chain items. So for example, you can proc a Runic lens into a missile, into a Runic lens, and then you can repeat the cycle with any other proc item. It is absurd. This item is broken. It does so much base damage as well, even on high proc low burst damage survivors. I don't know why people like Raidans are downplaying this item. This item is absurd. This item is broken. Sonorous Whispers, I'm also gonna put in S here. I honestly think this item is a little overrated. I don't think it's one of the best items in the game. Not anymore after nerfing the drop rate from 15% to 4% from elites. I still think it's very, very good. I still think it's a run-winning item, especially if you get it early, but I just don't think it's the broken mess it was before. Not after this nerf. But I'm still gonna put it in S tier. Free items. Who's saying no to that? Obviously that's something that's broken. Now we're on to Warbonds. Warbonds, my friend. Dun 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 dun, and then the boss dies. Like, need I say any more? Need I say any more? Now, upon seeing the rework for this item for the first time, I was under the impression this was good only if you full loot. Now that is completely incorrect. This item is good no matter what you do in a run. At the start of a stage, it gives you +5 of the buff initially, and transfers the amount of buff you get from the previous stage to the next one. So you can very easily just get max stats of this buff at the start of a stage, because it's +5 at the start, and then it adds up the stacks you had from the previous stage. This item is absurd. And then at 20 stacks, with a few damage items, proc items, it's basically guaranteed to kill any boss. Okay, long-standing solitude, also S tier. I've kind of done an injustice to this item with my video on it because I rushed stage 5. Don't do that. That is a fat mistake. If you full loot, you level up more. If If you level up more, you eventually get to like level 70, 80, you outscale enemies. This item can very easily become absurd. This is definitely S tier, probably one of the best items in the game. Seed of Life, it's just a Dio's best friend, but in the equipment slot. S tier, I guess. It does suffer from the same thing as a Dio's best friend though, whereas it replaces another good equipment that would have been useful or you could have had. I just think there's less useful equipments than there are useful and broken reds. So I'd say a Seed of Life is like slightly better than the Dio's. Also, if you're playing co-op, you can use it to resurrect your teammates. I'd say S tier is right, but I can understand if people disagree with this. Not all people are going to view the value of an extra life the same. It's understandable if you'd say it's like B tier or something. But yeah, that's my tier list. I'm not gonna bother ordering them this time. But dang, holy moly, what an overhaul. These DLC items, man, they are really good now. Not a single one I'd put in D tier. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Maybe sub. But that's gonna be it from me. See ya.